How big of a failure was Death Stranding really? It's really curious how Sony hasn't been talking about or hyping up Death Stranding at all since before it came out. This really was the definitive PlayStation release in which it came out, it had been hyped up long before it had been shown off, and then was almost completely forgotten immediately after it came out. And for good reason. The game was a piece of shit, but, and this is a very big but, there are plenty of things to talk about when it comes to Death Stranding, specifically about how well it actually did. Of course, I've talked at length about the Konami and Kojima situation, the Sony thing, the quality of the game itself. Let's talk about the actual sales and the actual numbers that put into this. The rumored numbers, because I haven't necessarily heard a definitive hard number, because I doubt Sony wants people talking about the definitive hard numbers, but the figure I've heard recently, the figure that's been going around, is that Death Stranding cost $100 million to make and then only sold 3 million units. $100 million to develop and then only sold 3 million units. If that's true, and I suspect that it might be, Death Stranding could very possibly be one of the most poorly performing video game franchises ever. You know what I mean? Like, this game had no legs, it had no longevity, other than that entire mystery over, like, ooh, what's it going to be about? Other than that, it had absolutely nothing going for it. And once it saw release, once people became aware of this, an interest in it immediately died off in like a couple of weeks. I believe Death Stranding, its sales actually crashed harder than other PlayStation games, which typically do crash rather quickly within a couple of months. But this one crashed in a couple of weeks. Word of mouth was that bad, right? Nobody who was playing this game could seriously recommend it. The only people who were seriously defending it after a certain period of time were people like Yang Ye and Angry Joe and YouTube Shills, right? Whose entire career depends on defending Kojima and Sony and PlayStation and these other corporations, right? Like actual gamers, you know, credible, reliable sources of information, like actual enthusiasts, people like me, could tell you, like, right off the bat, this game is bullshit. Kojima has completely lost it. He's completely lost all credibility. This should have been a career-ending move. And I think that's kind of the struggle we're going on with right now, is that, like, Kojima, the PlayStation Nation, those people, right? They're trying to spin this narrative that somehow Death Stranding is somehow this very creative new concept that simply didn't pay out. Like, oh, you can't win them all. You can't come up with something completely new and original and expect it to turn out well. Well, again, this is something I've said as like a creator. This is why you shouldn't necessarily go out and try to make something new and original. There is a reason that so much of fiction and entertainment, media, technology is derivative of something else. There's nothing wrong with being inspired by something, doing the same thing the same way. You know what I mean? There's nothing wrong with Kojima, making Metal Gear sequels, you know what I mean? Like making Metal Gear more like the original Metal Gear, right? If anything, I would say Kojima's problem from the early days, right? Metal Gear Solid 2. It's somehow too similar to the original, but it's deep and subversive. It completely failed to be an entertaining property in and of itself. You know what I mean? Like, if anything, it should have been more like the original in the sense that, like, it was Snake going in to take down a Metal Gear, right? Like, sure, you should have had new characters and new ideas, new boss fights and stuff like that, but, like, the general idea should have stayed the same. Like Death Stranding, oh, you're a delivery man going through a post-apocalyptic hellscape. Well, the way it's presented, the way it's handled, seemed to be to create this thing that's entirely unlike any other thing that exists, and yet doing that made something that's completely unfun. Because the reason everyone wants to be the next Zelda, the next Mario, the next Metroid, the next Pokemon, those games are fun and they have a good reputation because of what they established, right? Death Stranding really just coasted by on Kojima's name, his credibility, his reputation, his legacy, the Metal Gear license, like anything except the game itself. It really felt like the Hollywood actors that were involved, Sony's budget, like it's a PlayStation exclusive. That was a big part of the publicity. Sony is going to let Kojima, the genius, do whatever he wants, and panned out really poorly, I think. And it's, well, I should say I know, because it's an indisputable fact, even though the gaming journalists are desperately trying to downplay this. Like, again, I cannot stress enough how gaming journalists, right, like Angry Joe's, the Yang Ye's, and I'm sure more, went out there and seriously tried defending this game to the best of their ability in order to protect their interests, protect Sony, protect Kojima, and so also they can guarantee a paycheck for when the next major hype cycle comes around. Because I do think that's the long and short of it, is that, like, they're not interested in the game itself. They don't appreciate the game itself. They don't appreciate, like, Konami or Metal Gear, especially in Angry Joe's case. He hasn't played a single Metal Gear game other than Metal Gear Solid 5. Well, and Rising, but I don't think that really counts. They're defending their financial interests. They're defending the games that people are talking about and the ones that will get them millions of views on their channels. Like, they want those games. They want to keep the hype train going so they have something to talk about when, 5, 10 years from now. Like, that's it. That's their mindset. Like, they're not interested in actually playing new, innovative games. Like, they're protecting their financial interests. And I do think this needs to be a thing about gaming journalists going forward. Hashtag Gamergate. There needs to be a divide between, like, the critics and the people who actually, like, cover the games, like actually share the gaming news, because like having these people like intermingle, it creates a conflict of interest. Like, that in and of itself is inherently a conflict of interest, because you're criticizing the games that the companies are like flying you out to like cover. You know what I mean? Like Ubisoft with Watch Dogs, like they were giving like these people like free phones and stuff like that. Oh, Watch Dogs is so cool. Here, look, here's a free phone. This kind of thing happens all the time. Like Metal Gear Solid 5 had the boot camps. I'm sure there's a lot of examples that have sort of flown under the radar over the years, but it happens all the time, right? But it needs to stop, right? We need to stop really giving these developers the benefit of the doubt. They need to show the game. We need to stop like relying so much on brand names and established publishers, right? Like, how many people only hyped up Final Fantasy VII-R because it's Final Fantasy VII? Like, no. Like, what about all? There was so much wrong with that release as well. But I think Death Stranding is really, really something special in the respect that it's a true failure, like a monumental failure in every aspect, from the marketing, the production, the eventual release, the game itself. Like, everything about this screams botched to me. Like I said, this should have been a career-ending move for Kojima and for PlayStation, for that matter. Like, this is your PlayStation exclusive, right? This is the game you spent 4 years hyping up. It was 4 years, right? Like 2015 to 2019, late 2019. Yeah, I think it was about 4 years. A little bit over 4 years, right? This is the game you seriously spent 4 years hyping up as the next big thing, as this industry-defining title, this completely new thing from the creative genius that is Hideo Kojima. Let me just throw this out right now. PT wasn't good. PT wouldn't have been good, even with my man Junji Ito working on it. Like, no. I don't think that would have been good either. Like, Metal Gear Solid 5 wasn't good. 4 wasn't good. Peace Walker wasn't good. What other Metal Gear game came out after 4? Rising was not that good. I don't understand why people suck so much Rising dick when it's just mediocre at best. Like, at least it's an actual video game, unlike 4, but it's not a very good one. Like, not like sure, it's better than Devil May Cry, but what isn't? Like, really, like, what isn't better than Devil May Cry 2, really? But yeah, I am just Konami. The signs that Kojima was like this for that there was something wrong with Kojima have been there for over a decade, right? Since at least Metal Gear Solid 4, right? And nobody wants to acknowledge it. No one wants to admit it. No one wants to, like, ask these questions. Nobody wants to say, like, well, what happened to all these other Konami IPs? What happened to Contra, Castlevania? What happened to Silent Hill? Like, Suikoden? Like, all these other Konami games we used to like. Like, why are we just getting these increasingly shitty Metal Gear spinoffs? But as long as it's Metal Gear, as long as it has Kojima's name on the box, we're good. And then suddenly, Kojima leaves. These people hype up Death Stranding, and we're here, like, talking about how bad Death Stranding was. Kojima's not going to be around forever. Like, he's, like, in his 50s now. I think he'll be actively... I think he'll primarily be focusing on movies. But I think if, like, his next major project is a film, that'll be the end of his career. Like, this motherfucker cannot make a film. Like, Death Stranding, I think, was proof positive of that, right? Hideo Kojima cannot make a film. His career is over, even though the fanboys do not want to admit it.